Hi, this is Andrea Richard Scott with ARS Professional Development, and I am the Purpose Guide. Thank you for joining me again tonight as we go over a really powerful topic, and that has to do with positive thinking. As before, we are going to go through a series of information that I'm going to share with you. There's going to be instruction tonight, and then I'm going to give you an opportunity to actually get some coaching. And I'm going to ask you some questions. It'll be part of our action challenge. And I want to really encourage you to take the time to pause, to think about some of these questions I'm going to ask you, and really spend time with these questions, answering these questions. I've spoken to you in the past about getting a journal. I hope you have your journal with you as we're going through this program. And what I'm going to want you to do is just write down the questions, and if you can think about the answers now, that's fine. If not, if you're listening to this after the fact, you can pause the recording, and then you can spend some time really answering these questions. This is what is going to help you to move forward. So when we think about positive thinking, it's really all in your mind. Your mind can only hold one thought at a time. So why not make that thought a positive one? Have you ever met someone who was extremely positive? You know who I'm talking about. Those people who are optimistic. They bounce back and they put a positive spin on everything. And then there's the pessimists. These are those extremely negative people who go on and on and on about how the world is conspiring against them. You know those people. Nobody really wants to be around people like that. You can use positive thoughts to create the life that you desire. In order to fill your mind up with positive thoughts, you have to be dedicated and committed to changing. Begin by changing your limiting beliefs, setting and holding great expectations, clarifying your intentions, and nourishing your mind with positive materials. One of the best things about the Silver Membership Program is that we don't just focus on your business, although that's a really big part of it. My desire and my goal is to help you reset your mindset. That's what these monthly coaching calls are all about. Tonight, we're going to focus on intentions. We're going to focus on expectations and expectancy. We're going to focus on setting clear intentions. We're going to focus on how do you go about getting faith, and how do you feed your mind. I've always wondered about these elephants that you see in circuses or at the zoo. Elephants are massive animals. Have you ever considered why an elephant would stay put in a circus or a zoo? Well, the truth is an elephant, when it's small, is tethered to a chain in a post. Over time, they change out that chain until ultimately it's just a flimsy rope that serves the same purpose. Truly, the elephant should be able to break through that rope, but it gets stuck in that mentality of thinking that it cannot get free. The tether that holds us to mediocrity begins with our experiences from our youth. Limiting beliefs hold us back, and like the elephant, we are not aware of our own power. We are much more powerful than we realize, just like the elephant. I believe the elephant would be able to rip out those chains and run free. However, it's gotten stuck in that mentality that it just cannot do it. It's given up. The point is that we can do anything that we want to do. Of course, we have to be very clear that we can't defeat natural laws like gravity and things like that. Once we begin to align ourselves with our belief systems and with natural laws, then we can start to move forward. We can begin to move forward and get those things in life that we really want. The problem is we have to learn how to remove the limiting beliefs or the tethers that have been placed on us by our past or by society's conditioning. Tony Robbins says people so often develop limiting beliefs about who they are and what they're capable of. Because they haven't succeeded in the past, they believe they won't be able to succeed in the future. If you are allowing past failures to hold you back, you are allowing your past experiences to tether you the same way animal trainers tether elephants to get them to not run away. A limiting belief acts as a tether that prevents us from moving obstacles out of our way and performing with the full force of our greatness. Beliefs are powerful, self-directed forces based upon generalizations from our past experiences. Patients who are given placebos experience improvements in their symptoms simply because they believe that they're being given a powerful drug. Beliefs can hold us back. The beliefs that we hold in our minds have the power to control our lives. Our beliefs determine just how much of our God-given potential we will use. To change our beliefs or our thoughts, we have to identify the belief that's associated with that thought. As we create beliefs, we begin to think and act differently. Our thoughts send powerful directions to our subconscious about what we want to deliver in our life. If we start to shift our beliefs about ourselves and those around us, we will begin to see our lives change before our very eyes. I love this story about Roger Bannister. Are you familiar with the 4-minute mile? Prior to 1954, it was commonly believed that if you ever ran a mile in less than 4 minutes, your heart would explode. Everybody believed this. Nobody thought that it was possible. But Roger Bannister, on May 6, 1954, did the most amazing thing. He dared to make the impossible possible. And once he did that, 37 other runners were able to do the same thing. They broke that 4-minute mile barrier. And then 2 years later, 300 more people were able to do it. So that just goes to prove that just because everybody believes something to be so, it doesn't necessarily have to be so. Roger Bannister was able to dispel that myth that you couldn't run a mile in less than 4 minutes. Let's go ahead and do our first action challenge. Throughout this coaching call, as I mentioned, I will ask you to pause for a few moments and take an action challenge. I really want to encourage you to do this. Here is where you are going to get real value from this program. You'll be working on yourself. The questions that I ask you will help to reset your mindset. Go ahead and take a moment for us to do this for a while. The first question is, what limiting belief have you been holding on to? There are little beliefs that may have come from your past failures or maybe naysayers who told you that you weren't good enough or capable enough. Maybe they come from your own fears and doubts about your abilities. Write them down. Shine the light on them. That's the only way that you're going to be able to dispel these beliefs. Question number 2, what struggle or pain have you experienced by holding on to these limiting beliefs? Think about how these beliefs have prevented you from moving forward in your life. Think about the opportunities that you've missed out on. Think about the things you've been afraid to do or the places that you've been afraid to go. Question number 3, what would change in your life if you eliminated those beliefs? Think about how different your life would be if nothing was holding you back from what you really want to do. Think about where you'd be if you had a magic wand and could change everything, if you could make those limiting beliefs disappear. I want you to picture yourself without those limiting beliefs. Question number 4, what new beliefs are you willing to adopt? Now I want you to think about what new supporting beliefs you'd like to bring into your life. Think about your imagination and the power that you have to shape your life. The subconscious doesn't know the difference between something that we imagine and something that's real. So we can imagine ourselves the way we would like to be. If you do this often and consistently enough, you will begin to shape and transform your thinking. Think of the new belief you want to adopt and then spend time every day feeding and nurturing it. If you're listening live, I want you to write those 3 questions in your journal, and I want you to begin to think about them. If you're listening after the fact to this recording, this is a good time to pause the recording and spend some time answering these 4 questions. What limiting beliefs have you been holding on to? What struggle or pain have you experienced holding on to these limiting beliefs? What would you change in your life if you could eliminate those beliefs? And what new belief are you willing to adopt? I love this quote from The Shack. I read The Shack several years ago with my book club, and I came across this passage in The Shack that I just thought was so amazing because it talked about expectancy and it talked about expectations. So William P. Young, the author of The Shack, said, if you and I are friends, there's an expectancy that exists within our relationship. When we see each other or are apart, there's an expectancy of being together, of laughing and talking. That expectancy has no concrete definition. It's alive and it's dynamic, and everything that emerges from our being together is a unique gift shared by no one else. But what if I change that expectancy to expectation, spoken or unspoken? Suddenly, law has entered into our relationship. You are now expected to perform in a way that meets my expectations. Our living friendship deteriorates into a dead thing with rules and requirements. It's no longer about you and me, but about what friends are supposed to do or the responsibilities of a good friend. And I think that statement in the book, The Shack, by William P. Young, really speaks to expectations and expectancy. Brian Tracy says, whatever we expect with confidence becomes our own self-fulfilling prophecy. Expecting with great confidence is expectancy. We are the ones that are in complete control. The key here is that we have to have confidence and expectancy for a great outcome. We have to expect positive outcomes. Be careful of self-fulfilling prophecies which actually alter your action and makes the prophecy come true. For example, if you wake up on the wrong side of the bed and think, today is going to be a lousy day, everything will conspire to prove that you're right. If you are an optimist with a positive outlook, all the same things may happen, but they don't seem to affect you. If you're a glass half full kind of person, then you always expect things to work out in your favor. On the other hand, things never seem to work out for the pessimist. Most people set expectations and are disappointed when the things don't work out their way. They end up upset or demoralized because their expectations were not met. However, the people who face life with expectancy have a focus on something positive happening in their lives. For example, a flat tire may create a situation where they meet the person who will help them close a big deal. We may not always get what we deserve, but we usually get what we expect. Even if things don't work out as planned, these people are able to see the good in the situation. Expectancy is the key, really expecting positive things to happen no matter what our situations are. I love this story that I came across about a landscape gardener. It's a good example of expectancy and positive outlook. The landscape gardener ran this business that had been in his family for many, many generations, 2 or 3 generations at least. The staff was happy. The customers loved visiting the store. Everything that they did was done with such joy and happiness. For a long time, everybody just thought that the business was doing extremely well. In fact, it was really the other way around. Like any other business, some years they had good years and some years they weren't so good. But they always followed this one principle, this attitude of things are great. And they wore this badge that said, business is great. Everyone saw the badge, and the first thing they would say is, so what's so great about business? What the business owner would do is sit down and talk to them about what was great. And so he would share all kinds of things like the pleasure of talking to different people every day, or the rewards that came from having a staff that they could challenge with new experiences, or maybe the relaxed atmosphere and the joy and the healthy environment that they worked in, and on and on and on. There was a lot to be happy about. And so no matter how miserable that person was who asked the question, what's so great about business, they usually end up feeling a lot happier about themselves in just a few moments of listening to this unending, infectious enthusiasm and positivity. The question is, how is this possible? The badge came first. Then the great business followed. Living with expectancy of positive things shifts your perspective, and it also shifts the perspective of those people who are around you. So here's our second action challenge. Take a moment to think about this for a while. How has your thinking affected your results? Maybe you've hesitated to take action because you thought that things wouldn't work out in your favor. Maybe you haven't taken the necessary risks to move you forward in your occupation, profession, or business. Think about that for a while. What negative things have you been expecting or anticipating? Sometimes we practice self-defeating behaviors by talking ourselves into a negative state. We use the excuse that we don't want to be disappointed or we don't want to get our hopes up. What we really are doing is telling our subconscious that we don't really believe or we don't deserve to be successful. How can you use the power of expectancy to get positive results? Instead of having expectations that could lead to disappointment, you have to choose to live with expectancy. Write down how that shows up for you. Is there a specific thing that you need to shift your perspective about? If so, how does that shift from expectation to expectancy affect your feelings about the situation? Write down those answers to those questions in your journal. You may want to revisit your journal if you get additional insights later on. Go ahead and take a moment to do that. And as I mentioned before, if you are listening to this call after the fact, this is a great time to pause the recording, go ahead and answer those questions, and meet me back here. Intentions. I think the best example that I could think of about intention is Muhammad Ali. I remember watching boxing with my dad when I was a little girl. Muhammad Ali, he would get up there and he would say his little rhymes, float like a butterfly, sting like a bee, and all of those kinds of things. And I think that he would intimidate his opponents, but he was the master of intention. He developed a set of mental skills which really allowed him to perform at his best when he was in the ring. Before the fight, he used to have all of these techniques that he would use. He would use affirmations and visualizations, and he would rehearse mentally, and he would do confirmations and all of this. But the most powerful thing that I think he did was use this mantra that he would make all the time, I'm the greatest, I'm the greatest. And I remember when he was fighting, he would make these public statements of his intentions. He was constantly shouting these rhymes. As I mentioned, I float like a butterfly, sting like a bee. You know, I'm the greatest, I'm Muhammad Ali. Those kinds of things. And he repeated those little rhymes. They were like mantras to him. And he said them to the press. He said them to his opponent. And sometimes he even said them in the ring. And indeed, Muhammad Ali was one of the greatest fighters. We still remember him as an icon in that sport. Wayne Dyer says, but if you put your thoughts on what is on the way, then you'll start looking for every little clue, and every person walking into your life becomes someone who is a messenger or a deliverer of something that is going to help you to deliver what you have an intention about. You know, I've always had a little problem with The Secret and the law of attraction because I believe that there's just so much more to it than sitting at home and chanting about your positive future or creating a vision board that you look at every day. I don't knock those things. I think it's great to have positive affirmations, and I myself have a vision board, so I believe in those things, but that is not all of it. Success can start that way, but there has to be something else that you do. You must take action. The more we focus on our intentions, the more authentic we are. Wayne Dyer explains the secret in the law of attraction as follows. The law of attraction is this. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. And it made me start really thinking about it. Everything that I am is already inside of me. And everything you are is already inside of you. What we have to do is focus on bringing all of that out, and all the things that we want in our life will come to us based upon focusing on being authentic and living our authentic self. So we set these intentions because we are bringing or manifesting those things into our lives that are already part of our being or who we are. We really have to have clear intentions that are aligned to our beliefs. It's kind of like radio signals that go out and come back, and they come back in tangible ways. Setting daily intentions is a way of connecting a goal in the future with a motivation in the present. The more that we put our intentions out there, the more that we're going to be able to manifest those things back into our life. We have to hold on to our intentions even when everything around us contradicts it. Have you ever given up hope on something that you were maybe wishing for or praying for, only to find out that if you had held on just a little bit longer, that you could have had what you wanted? I know I've had that experience where I've driven a far distance and I turned around only to have to turn back around because the place that I was heading to was just around the corner. It's always wise to go a little farther and wait a little longer for things to truly happen, especially if they're important to us. I mean, bottom line is you have to be persistent. All thoughts that conflict with the intentions that you have to be controlled. You have to control negative thoughts that are going to stop you from getting those things that you desire. You know, if you don't do that, they can negate and sabotage the manifestation of the very thing that you desire. So you always want to state your intentions in positive ways. Be careful to talk about what you want instead of what you don't want. So you don't want to say, I don't want to have any debt. What you want to say is, I'm completely debt-free. It's a nuance, but it's important because if you say, I don't want to have any debt, well, what you're doing is attracting the very thing that you want to avoid. There is a difference between goals and intentions. Goals are to intentions as a map is to a destination. In other words, the intention is where you want to go, and the goal is how you're going to get there. You know, when I think about someone who set an intention and really manifested it, I think about Jim Carrey. I recently saw Jim Carrey in Mr. Popper's Penguin, and I think about the fact that Jim Carrey has become really an icon in terms of comedy and acting. He had the courage to step up and begin to go after his dream of becoming a comedian. The story goes on that before Jim Carrey was famous, he walked up to the Hollywood Hills and wrote a check to himself for $10 million. On the memo line of that check, he wrote, for services rendered. For years, he carried that check in his wallet. He would pull it out occasionally and take a look at it, and this kept his dream visible in his mind. Now, think about this. He has had many gigs, including the Duck Factory. He was part of the Living Color cast. He made Ace Ventura popular. He was in The Mask. I mentioned Mr. Popper's Penguin. He has done quite a lot of work in that industry, and now he's one of the highest paid entertainers in the industry. He's making well over that $10 million that he once wrote about. He's grossing over $20 million per film from what I understand. So what role do you think this check played in his success? Now, we can't all just write checks and expect that that's going to happen for us. There's a lot that goes behind it. I believe that he wrote that check setting that intention, but then he put everything in him behind that. He constantly pulled that check out on a regular basis because he was feeding that intention. Let's move on to our third action challenge. Take a moment and think about this for a while. What intention do you have for the remainder of the year? Calculate how many days you have left in the year and set clear intentions about where you see yourself on December 31st. Will you be in the same place you were last New Year's Eve, or will you have made a significant difference in your life? Have you made significant progress? What goals do you have that are related to that intention? Intentions are useless without a concrete plan for accomplishing them. So you want to set goals that complement your intentions. Make sure you set SMART goals. Now, you probably know this, but I'm going to share with you SMART goals are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. Each day you can choose to do something that will get you closer to accomplishing your goal. You will be amazed at how small, consistent actions in the right direction can transform your life. Question number 3, what actions are you taking to get you closer to the manifestation of your intentions? Write down the specific actions that you will take on a daily basis and how those actions will get the job done. Be specific and clear about the necessity of each action. This will enable you to eliminate activity and focus on action that will propel you forward. I think a lot of times people get real busy in activity, but activity does not move you towards your goal unless that activity is action-based. Question number 4, what has been holding you back from moving forward with your intention? Take an honest look at your life and figure out what's standing between you and success. This could be your dream or your purpose, whatever it is, what's standing in between you and your purpose. Be honest with yourself and don't be surprised if that obstacle turns out to be another person. It could be a fear. It could be a system of beliefs that you've had for a very long time. Go ahead and write down the answers to those questions in your journal. Again, you might want to revisit these questions later on and add any additional insights that you get. One of the beautiful things about keeping a journal as we're going through this process is that you're going to be able to go back and look at how you've grown and how you've developed and what new insights you've gathered over a period of time. So I really encourage you to take the time to use a journal and jot all these things down in your journal. I want to talk to you a little bit about faith. And I love these stories, especially these real-life stories about people who have overcome amazing odds. This story really struck me because Bob Woodruff is a TV news person. One Sunday morning in January, a call woke up Bob's wife when she was at a hotel in Disney World. It was the president of ABC News. He was calling to tell her that Bob had been wounded in Iraq. He'd been in Iraq covering a story. He told her that Bob was alive, but he had taken shrapnel in the brain. Now, think about that for a second. You get this call about someone that you dearly love that has been hit with shrapnel in the brain of all places. He had been riding in a tank with the Army, and something blew up, and it injured him. She had to get out of that room to think, to pray, to do something, to make some phone calls. She and Bob, she admits, had had some tough times in their marriage. There was a time when she had a miscarriage, and it caused her to go into deep depression, but she recounted her faith pulled her through that time, and she ended up being stronger for having gone through that experience. She was wondering if her faith was going to help her get through this, especially if the news got any worse about what was going on with Bob. She couldn't imagine her life without her husband. And most people in that position feel the same way. I mean, how are you going to go on after someone who you really, truly care about goes away? When she was finally allowed to see Bob, she wasn't prepared for what she saw. He was unconscious. His head was swollen to the size of a rugby ball. He was deformed on the top of his head because a piece of his skull was missing. He was on a ventilated tube, and he had all kinds of things sticking out of his body, all kinds of tubes and things like that. He was cut up all over the place, stitched all over the place, stitches on everything, forehead, neck, cheeks. His lips were swollen. His eyes looked like distorted and things like that. He looked really bad. It was amazing that he was able to survive that ordeal. She leaned down and she kissed him and she whispered to him, "I love you, sweetie. You've had an accident, but you're going to be all right." And I think about that because you're looking at this situation where it doesn't look good. And that's what faith is. Faith is all about believing the things that you don't see. If she were to believe what her eyes were telling her at that moment, she couldn't have imagined that he was going to be all right. But that was her faith speaking. And so the doctors told her to prepare herself. He's going to have to learn everything all over again. He's a brain injury patient at this point, and lots of things are going to change. And he's going to have to learn how to speak, and he's going to have to learn how to write and read all over again. And so she recounts that when her faith was really hard to find, she had to draw on the faith of so many other people. People sent cards and condolences and well wishes and things like that. If it wasn't for the people that she surrounded herself with and their faith, she may not have been able to make it. One day she was telling him, "I love you, I'm with you, you're safe, you're in the hospital in D.C. And all at once, it was as if he came alive. He opened his eyes and his mouth, and he was trying to talk, but he was having a hard time. Many, many months later, he had to have surgery where they were putting an acrylic skull plate to fuse the bone where the skull was missing. This was to protect his brain, of course. And then he would be free to go outdoors. After a while of treatment and getting the best medical care possible, he finally was able to gain his strength and come back to her. Now, Bob Woodruff is back on television. Now, I'm sure he may never be exactly the same, but in some ways, he may even be better. I believe the most important thing that turned out for her was all of those prayers and everything that kind of held them close. The faith was deepened by the fact that everybody was around her, and she ended up having greater strength than she knew possible. So this situation, though it started out really bad and scary and negative, really ended up allowing them to grow and to increase their faith. They ended up writing a book called In an Instant, and they recount their story. And I think that's what life does to us. It gives us these opportunities to really exercise our faith and to see what we're really made of. Mother Teresa says, "A sacrifice to be real must cost, must hurt, must empty ourselves. The fruit of silence is prayer. The fruit of prayer is faith. The fruit of faith is love. The fruit of love is service. And the fruit of service is peace." And as you know, Mother Teresa is a humanitarian, and she is probably, for most of us, an unrealistic standard because we think about the work that she's done, and maybe many of us would not have done it. However, she was a simple woman with a resolve and with faith. Her faith enabled her to move mountains with her humanitarian work and her advocacy for the rights of poor and helpless people. So think about it. What can our faith do? What can we do? We don't have to be a Mother Teresa, but we can do something. We were designed to do something specifically, and it's important that each of us really understands what that is and live that purpose. Again, it doesn't have to be something like conquering world hunger or anything like that, but just operating in that position to which we have been called. Have faith. Faith is the substance of things that you are hoping for and the evidence of things that you don't see. It sounds a bit esoteric, but faith allows you to believe in the things even when you don't see them for yourself. Faith and trust are closely aligned. When you have faith, you trust that everything is going to work out for your good. You trust that the work that you're doing is not in vain. You also trust that you will have the resources that you need when you need them. You trust that the right people will come along and support you. All these things may not be evident at this very moment, but your faith will allow you to believe that at the right time, everything will be exactly as it's supposed to be. It allows you to understand that everything happens for a reason and that everything you experience is a lesson along the path to your goal or towards your destiny. You need to trust in something that's bigger than yourself. For me, it's a reliance on God. At some point, everyone needs a little faith. I love this story about the burning hut. It reminds me that even when things don't go my way, I can still come out on top. The only survivor of a shipwreck was washed up on a small uninhabited island. He prayed feverishly for God to rescue him, and every day he scanned the horizon for help, but there seemed like no one was coming to help him. Finally, he was exhausted, and he eventually decided to build himself a little house, a little hut out of some driftwood so he could protect himself from the elements and maybe store a few of his possessions. Didn't have much. Then one day, after he was scavenging for food, he arrived home to find that his hut was burning down. The smoke was rolling up to the sky, and the worst thing happened. He lost everything he had. He didn't have much in the first place, and he lost the little bit that he had. He was so stunned, and he was so upset. He was angry, and he said, God, how could you do this to me? Early the next day, he was woken up by the sound of ships that were approaching the island. Now, all this time he had been looking for help, and no help came. But today, they finally showed up. And then he asked them, how did you know I was here? And one of the rescuers said to him, we saw your smoke signal. It's easy for us to get discouraged when things are not going our way, when things are bad, when things are falling apart. But the thing is, we really should not lose heart because God is always at work in our lives. Even in the middle of our pain and suffering, we have to remember that when our hut is burning down, it really is a smoke signal that's going up to summon the grace of God. And so whatever is going on in our lives, whatever is going on in our business, whatever we experience that doesn't look the way that we want it to look, we don't know what is going on in the background. We have to really have faith. We have to trust. We have to live with expectancy that even though our hut may be burning down, there's something great, something wonderful is on the other side of that. So here's our next action challenge. This is our fourth action challenge for the evening. Take a moment and think about this for a while. What expectations have tested your faith? I think it's fair to say that at this stage in life, we've all had major challenges that have tested our faith or our resolve. These are life-changing experiences that really show us what we're made of. Once we're able to go through it, we can think back of how we've been through it or how we've fared through it. When we're going through it, we don't think that we can make it. But once it's over, we typically look back and we realize that we're stronger for having gone through it. If you don't have a story like this, hold on to your hat because I can promise you're going to have one. What experience has strengthened your faith? These are experiences that taught us to let go and trust. Often I find when I let go and step back, things begin to work out. When I'm trying to hold on or orchestrate things, that's when I delay the process. The only thing that allows you to step back is trust and faith. Your faith will enable you to weather the storm and live to tell the tale. What are you currently using the power of your faith to manifest? If you built up your faith muscles in the past, then you most likely learned how to engage it when you need it. Think about the things that are going on in your life right now. Think about how you can move forward to applying faith in that situation. Does it change your perspective about how things will turn out? Write the answers to these questions in your journal. Again, you may want to revisit this section later when you get additional insights. I want to talk to you a little bit about your mind. I find the mind to be a fascinating thing. There is a debate whether or not the brain and the mind are the same, The brain is the physical and the mind is the spiritual. They are closely related and linked, and one doesn't operate without the other. Some have referred to the brain as a supercomputer. We soak up information from the moment we are born until the moment we die. The subconscious mind is like the hard drive, and our conscious mind, that's like the computer monitor. We have stored so much data in our subconscious, but at any given time, we're focused on or aware of what's on the screen. The mind has unlimited potential. The more we use it, the more we expand it. Most of us have a preference for one side of the brain over the other. For example, you know if you are more analytical or more creative. It's important for us to feed our mind so that we can take advantage of the unlimited potential that's available to us. So if you're a left brain kind of person, you're analytical or logical or precise or repetitive and those kinds of things, then you can feed your mind in both areas. Likewise, if you are a right brain person, you're more creative and imaginative or general, think about how you can feed your mind, how you can expand your mind, how you can grow your mind. I love what Maya Angelou says. The need for change bulldoze a road down the center of your mind. Change is constant. We can never stand still. Things are changing all around us. In fact, if we choose not to change, we will either be run over or left behind. We have to look at the landscape and anticipate change, then do what it takes to stay ahead of it. Those who are truly successful are either visionaries who saw the change before everyone else did, or they're early adopters who changed and adapted quickly with the time. Nourish your mind. What are you feeding your mind? Are you feeding both sides of your brain? How much television are you watching? Today, most television programs centers on sex and violence. Instead of opting for mindless entertainment, try feeding your mind with a good book, continuing education courses, or research in your area of expertise. Commit to never-ending improvement. Seek out positive things like uplifting music, inspirational programs, and things like that. Expand your mind. Make a list of the things you've always wanted to do. Then the next time you get bored, don't reach for the remote. Reach for your list and do something then and there and cross it off your list. Steve Jobs died recently. He left behind this great legacy. He was a billionaire. He was around the age of 52 or so. And what I like most about this man was his creativity and his innovation. He transformed the world with his gadgets. I remember when my sister was looking to get her iPhone, and she asked me, well, what do you think about your iPhone? And I said to her, to tell you the truth, I would marry my iPhone. That's how much I love what he brought to a handheld device. He was adopted into a working class family. He grew up in an area that later would become Silicon Valley. He dropped out of Reed College because he couldn't pay the tuition, and he co-founded Apple in his parents' garage in 1976. After that, he was kicked out of Apple in 1985 after he had a power struggle with John Sculley. He returned to Apple in 1996, and he created this iPod sensation. In the meantime, though, he started this company called Pixar. And Pixar is an animation company which was the creator of things like Toy Story and Finding Nemo. He later sold that company, Pixar, to Disney. Prior to his death, he returned back to Apple, and there's been all this sensation with the iPad and the new iPhones, and people just cannot get enough. In fact, I have to tell you, I've been trying to get an iPhone 4S for the longest time, and it's so much in demand that you have to reserve them. You can't just walk into the store and pick one up. This man used his mind. This man was innovative. This man, I wonder what the company will be like now that he's gone on, but this man has brought such amazing things to the marketplace in terms of the gadgets that we're able to use. I remember years ago, the thought that we could have a PDA, a personal digital assistant, with a phone, that was a dream. That was like Star Trek kind of things. And now it's just so commonplace. In fact, the young people who are coming up today, they think it's just the way things are. I remember my first computer, we actually did key punch computers where you punched out those little cards. So things have just transformed in such a short time because of innovative minds like Steve Jobs. Here's your final action challenge. Take a moment and think about this for a while. What have you been feeding your mind? The masses feed their mind useless information in the form of mindless television watching, mind-bashing or numbing music, or other forms of entertainment that add to the problem rather than to finding a solution. It's important to feed your mind quality data. After all, garbage in, garbage out. How has this impacted your life? How has what you've been feeding impacted your life? You should be able to see a direct correlation between what you've been feeding your mind and the quality of your current life. The life you have right now is based upon all the thoughts, decisions, and actions you've made this far. The good news is that wherever you are today, you don't have to stay there. Question number 3, what positive things can you add to your menu, and how will the changes impact your life? You can make positive changes right now and begin to see the results in short order. The more dedicated you are to consistently performing with excellence and positivity, the greater rewards you will see down the line. I will submit that positive changes made today will completely transform your life. Wouldn't it be interesting to look back 5 years from now and remember what you were today? Take a moment to write in your journal how you will be different in 5 years. Write the answers to these questions in your journal. You may want to revisit the journal, as I said before, and add additional insights. Which principles from this lesson on positive thinking do you need to implement into your life? Go ahead and write that in your journal. To make this strategy, positive thinking, come alive, what will you commit to doing? I want to thank you for joining us again for the Silver Membership Program. This is Andrea Richard Scott, the Purpose Guide with ARS Professional Development. You can visit us at our home on the web at www.purposeguide.com. We look forward to talking to you again next month. Please take the opportunity to go through the questions that I've asked throughout this session. It will really help you to reset your mindset and focus more on building and creating that business and life that you truly love. Have a great evening. God bless you.